Sorry if you can't see me. Do you want me to move more controlling? Here, I'll do that. Does this help me?
Yeah, we can see it better. We can see it.
Okay. I don't know if I'll need these. Do you know me or something? It's weird. Oh. All right. I have been on a grief journey after the loss of my mother, who passed in May of last year. Over February break in 2025, my family and I visited my mother in Arizona, where I grew up. And it's a beautiful time in our lives. I was enjoying a new phase of motherhood with 3. My sweet baby boy Russell was 10 months old. I'd had him after almost 2 years of infertility, and I was basking in his sweet coups and firsts. And I remember that first day with her, introducing her to Russell and anticipating her excitement to meet her grandson, who was named after my late father. But I was really caught off guard. She was not looking well. Her smiles were pained and she was moving slowly. Snooping in her cabinets, like daughters do, I found medications for maladies that she had not disclosed to me or my sister, who was also there in Phoenix. And I was scared. I could see that she was truly in the winter of her life at 72 years old. I did my best to enjoy our time together that week, and thank God we had it, because a week after we left, my sister went to my mom's house after she hadn't returned a message in many hours, which was unlike her, and found her curled up in her chair having a septic seizure. She called me and I prayed over her as the ambulance arrived, uncertain if this was it. The doctors explained it was a severe sepsis due to a UTI, and it was in her brain. She was in critical condition. So I flew back to Phoenix 2 days later and found her on oxygen and a BiPAP, struggling to speak and bedbound, helpless. In the 24 hours from the time I arrived, I saw her body fight with a resilience I did not think was in there. Decades of not exercising and smoking were not in her favor. I prayed over her, and others were praying for her near and far. It was a team effort. And within 24 hours, she went from barely moving her lips to speak to being able to talk clearly, from not recognizing me to finally realizing who I was and being excited to see me. Hallelujah. While she was still confused, her personality was intact, and she was sweet, and she seemed less burdened than she had been. The medicine was working, and the prayer was working. I had a moment where I felt God's peace surround me in the hallways of the hospital, and I also just saw him in so many reassuring smiles from kind nurses and doctors who took the time to care for her. But I had felt the winds change. Within days, the infection cleared, but left her body in a state of struggle to breathe or even sit up. So she was transferred to a nursing facility. Doctors prescribed a heavy regimen of respiratory therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. I don't know if you could tell by my telling you about all those years she smoked, but my mom didn't, and she wasn't really into therapy. But all of that was alongside fatigue-inducing seizure medications and many others that were supposed to help her, quote-unquote, get back on her feet. My sister and I kindly explained to the doctors that she would need a brain transplant to provide that can-do attitude that would be required for all of that. I did actually say that, and the doctor was like, what? I have a funny video, I should have put it in here, of her trying to smoke her oximeter. She was so confused. Bless.
She got a kitty.
So anyway. Oh, but I had to return to my family here. I had a baby. So I busied myself with any long-distance logistics to help cope with that discomfort of not knowing what was going to happen. Rachel, my sister, tended to her almost every day, and she did do some of the therapies, but the energy it required my mom to take mere steps seemed the equivalent to her of completing a marathon. Now, on a lighter note, she had become surlier these past few years, and I'm sure it was because she was experiencing pain. And they had put her on Zoloft. instance, vaping was a no-go. So I would call Mom, and we just had some of the best conversations we had had in years. It was really beautiful. I felt like I got to get my mom back for a bit, and it really was a gift. But unfortunately, it did not last, and after a couple of months in nursing, her body took a turn. I flew in, and my sister and I brought her home on hospice. I think it's really important to say this if you have not gone through this. I highly recommend that. Bringing my mom home to her own house was beautiful. I saw her face just light up when she got to be in her own space, because think about it, she was in shock going into this hospital. She didn't think she was gonna stay there forever. She didn't think she was gonna never come home again. And she loved home. It was her favorite place. So anyway, just saying, everything was taken care of for us, and we weren't dealing with the limitations of a nursing home either. We were able to put on her favorite music for hours, feed ourselves, slept in beds and couches as needed, and when we received friends and family, everyone just got to hang out. It was great. Then one night, after a couple days of this, we finally said our I love yous and prayed for God to take her peacefully. We removed her oxygen, which she was so ready for. She looked like something 10 pounds was lifted off of her face. She was so funny because I said, I love you. And she just was like, yeah, I love you. And I'm like, no, Mom, I really love you. She's like, I love you too. It was really sweet. So she fell asleep one last time, the day shy of she and my dad's 50th wedding anniversary, which was very poetic. Nothing prepares you for watching the one who brought you into the world and cared for you your whole life to die. We had lost my dad 14 years earlier to a heart attack, and we felt like we were robbed at the time. He was younger. We were all younger. I was the first of my friends to lose someone, to lose a parent. And this death had more preparation, right? More resolution. We were so grateful for that mercy after the shock of his immediate loss. I was older, more mature. I wasn't the first of my friends this time around. All of those things, right? I'd certainly developed healthier coping mechanisms since that first go round. I was 24. Oh, so certainly, all these better circumstances somehow meant that my grief journey would be easier, right? I was equating grief with the circumstances of the loss and not what it really is a symbol of, our spiritual connection and our eternal love. And it hit me like a freight train, feet in cement, trying to get through each day with tears in my eyes and a hole in my heart. And the more I tried to control or avoid it, because avoidance is still control, the more difficult it became, because I am not sovereign, God is. So into the season of winter, I went. My family here in Texas, while sad, they were not with me in winter. So life was still very busy going on around me. And I could tell my resilience was low. So many little things were bothering me. I was very irritable, not my best self. I was easily overwhelmed. And then I was mad that I was not my best self, and I was beating myself up. It was really, really helpful. And I was sarcastic.
What?
Yeah. Oh, and it was wildly frustrating because I like to be warm and friendly, but there was little of that to muster. And thank God I am in church all the time, because this environment helped lift me up on those dark days. I saw God's provision and grace in so many of the people around me, and I am forever indebted, truly. Bert and Stacy didn't fire me, despite lots of half-assing. Those are our pastors. my family probably wanted to, because being a good mom and wife was relegated to survival mode. The camp director who takes the kids to and from activities was put into hibernation. I experienced some wild mood swings. One minute I'd be hugging my babies, thanking God for my family. And then in the same breath, can they please be quiet and pick this crap up because I am overstimulated and so tired. And in fresh grief, you want limited, pleasant interactions because those emotions sit so high in your chest. But that's not how it goes all the time. So I would just shout at people in traffic, treat me nicely. And I'm sure that's what my horn was conveying. So, while some friends and family texted or called regularly, a few surprisingly avoided me or the topic altogether. And that sent me into a tailspin of anger and resentment. My head easily became a battleground. And we were doing Don't Give the Enemy a Seat at Your Table by Lou Giglio here in the fall, because God has perfect timing. And I have certainly prayed to give more grace to those, because I don't get to know why they needed to take that space. But while I've been writing this over the course of a couple of weeks, I prayed often for what to share with you all on the topic of being a witness to someone's winter. And he gave me a beautiful liturgy from a book called Every Moment Holy, Volume 2. And that is one of the papers you picked up on your way in. Being witness to someone grieving is really difficult and uncomfortable because they're struggling and feeling different in their own skin. Making room for their growing pains after a loss is invaluable. Sure, you can keep within your healthy boundaries, but you do need to know it can be ugly. Some think that they shouldn't be there or aren't of any service and assume there will be someone else there, so they'll leave you to it. But I challenge that, and I pray God equips us all to be there for those who we hold dear in their darkest hour. In the midst of all that, I prayed probably every day for God to take away my discomfort. I hated and resented living with the emotional roller coaster. I would push it down and go about my day. And unfortunately, after a few messy interactions where I had to write I'm sorry notes after because my grief anger crept up unexpectedly during the busyness and heaviness of the holidays, I decided that I might need some help. I asked my friend, when do I know if I should see a therapist? And without missing a beat, she said, when you ask that question. That was rude. So I phoned a therapist friend who recommended a grief therapist, and we connected right away. Like, hallelujah for that. Sometimes you're like, I don't know what all those words. I felt very certain of this person. I'm still seeing her. She's great. She recommended that I accept that I am actively grieving instead of rejecting it and resenting it, which was novel. I had to give myself permission to take time and plan for it. And I looked at my week, I picked out a few times to watch old videos or look at our old texts and just cry. I did that a few times, and I thought, wow, that really does feel better. And I was able to carry on a little lighter. I dove back into activities in the spring with the kids. However, I know I still thought that I was in control. I had an ironclad grip on controlling my emotions, walking around with my heavy but not cemented feet, and I really did feel like I was doing much better, until it came to celebrating a difficult first birthday and major milestone without my mom, my 40th. Emotions bubbled up big again, and I physically fell apart. I was gifted the flu for the week of my birthday in April, and my husband had to cancel a surprise party and everything. Mom and dad, me and my husband were sick at the same time, which was exhausting. And as mom, who is always preferred, I pushed myself to take care of everyone. Then to add injury to insult mid-flu, Jules got a concussion while doing gymnastics in our house. and I had to take her to the ER, and luckily she was okay, but she had to be put on concussion protocol for 2 weeks. To say my nerves were fried is an understatement, and within days of flu symptoms subsiding, I had developed daily severe migraines with aura. I had trouble eating due to the nausea. Sounds were triggering my neuralgia, which felt like knives on the right side of my head. I had to wear air traffic control headphones because kids are prone to making loud noises. It was miserable. And doctors said the headaches were likely caused by my nervous system overreacting to the flu. They asked, have you been dealing with extra stress lately? And what's really funny is that I did not think so. I was like, yeah, I don't think so. Have I? And I worked in the disaster field for 5 years before I hung up my hat to be a full-time stay-at-home mom. At the time I only had the 2 kids, but anyway, the point is I think I have a high threshold for stress, and I was given no choice in these migraines to just lay in silence and darkness for hours a day in submission to the pain. I had to surrender because I could not function. The medicine I was prescribed made me sleepy, and the only mercy was that most days I could typically make it to evening before it completely took over. My husband, who's the nicest guy, but he had never dealt with me at such a limited capacity. I sensed his frustration, and even though he cared, it created a lot of tension between us. So I literally Googled nervous breakdown, but a sanitarium seemed dramatic even for me, though a padded room sounded nice. And then I Googled couples counseling, and I signed us up because I had never been a 40-year-old mom of 3 with no parents experiencing a medical mystery headache with no end in sight. And he had never been married to her. She was not a delight. I didn't want to be married to me in that moment either. So it was luckily with the encouragement of others to push and advocate for myself in the midst of all of that, because I was not willing to suffer in silence. It is not my style. I suffer audibly. I found responsive migraine medication that doesn't make me sleep for 10 hours. I got nerve-blocking steroid shots. I started physical therapy. And finally, after a month, I had my first fully pain-free day. Oh. Then another, and then I got the rest I needed, and I was prioritizing myself. I thank the Lord. I have not had a migraine in a month now. Yes, thank you. Thank you. All of this to say, our culture tends to move on quickly from devastation, but it is not his plan. God was telling me to stop, hard stop. He was showing me that my health and my emotional health were worth taking the time for. He showed me that taking care of myself in grief is not weakness, it is holy. Jesus wept. John 11:35. I was forced to surrender. And finally, I can say the veil of winter is lifting. This disruption and discomfort has taught me that you have to go through it. But Lord knows I do not enjoy the process. But it means that sometimes tearing it all down to build back new is how we bear better fruit. I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten, the hopper, the destroyer, and the cutter, my great army which I sent among you. Joel 2:25. I want you all to know, because I'm sure you're worried, I like my husband again. We had to learn some tough things about ourselves for the in sickness and in health part of our vows, and I believe it will serve us for whatever we face down the road. I also found comfort after talking to some of our seasoned moms. They've been through it, and they are a treasure trove of experience and fulfillment of God's promises. I can see better now the ways that God has provided for me, and He put people in my path. He gave me strength to keep looking for answers, to advocate for myself, to grieve, but it is through the discomfort I have grown in my faith. So I say all of this in hopes that it gives you something to apply to your own winter journey, be it in the past or in the future, to understand someone in your life who may be going through one as well. Psalm 34:18. The The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. I am saved today and forevermore. Thanks be to God.